If my goal is to declutter the whole house, then amen. That's a great goal. But I can't do that in a day. Like that's not going to happen. So I really try to encourage people, break it down. So what does that look like? Well, that looks like we're going to start in the kitchen. Pick a spot to start and then, break that room down. And so you're kind of breaking down your goals until it is attainable and it is simple. It's part of the big goal, but that's okay. Like you're just getting a piece of that goal done because now you're one step closer to the ultimate goal of whatever it is you pick.
Welcome to Homeschool Talks, a podcast by HSLDA. This is a show about all things homeschooling, from practical tips to inspiring stories and everything in between. This episode of Homeschool Talks features a conversation originally hosted live on our Facebook page. So if you like what you hear, be sure to follow us there for more content like this. We're so glad you've joined us today, and we hope you enjoy the program.
Welcome, everyone. I'm Vicki Bentley. I'm an educational consultant and team leader for HSLDA, and joining me today is Kristi Clover. She's a homeschool mom and speaker and author of M.O.M, Master Organizer of Mayhem. I have my copy with me here today, and she's going to help us find joy in the chaos as we organize our household to fit our New Year's goals. So thank you again for talking with me today, Kristi. I wanted to see if you'd share a little bit about yourself and your family to get us started today. I know you're married to Steve and have many wonderful children, so tell us a little bit about your family.
Yes. Well, thank you for having me. Number one, it's such a joy to be here as part with HSLDA. But my family, so Steve and I just celebrated our 25th anniversary. So we've been married for 25 years. I know. I was telling someone the other day, I'm like, I remember when we were first married and we met someone who'd been married for 2 years and we were like, wow, 2 years. And now it's like, wow, 25 years. And we have 5 kids. And this is the first official interview I've done since I can say my oldest is married. So my oldest son just got married. Thank you. Yeah, in October. And then my second, so we've graduated 2 kids out of our homeschool, obviously my oldest. And my second is graduated and he has a job working downtown. So he moved out. So we're down to just 3 kids in the house. And so I still have a 14, 11, and 9-year-old. I just have to slow down and think through ages. But
no more toddlers. No more toddlers.
No more toddlers. Yeah, it's like there's definitely new seasons. Like no more the pre-reader stage. Like people can read. It's amazing.
When they're little, it feels like you're always going to have toddlers, but it really is. We want to encourage people. It really is a season that you're in. So what inspired you to start homeschooling?
Our story is kind of interesting. I've always been interested in homeschooling, and we'd done private school, a private preschool. And then when we started into kindergarten, I wasn't quite sure, how, can I pull this whole thing off with homeschooling? And we actually had Ken Ham from Answers in Genesis come to our church. And I just remember my husband and I were blown away. And it kind of gave us a fresh look at what homeschooling could look like. If there any other reason, we're going to homeschool just to give our kids a fighting chance to have a true personal relationship with the Lord. And you're not guaranteed it when you homeschool. Your kids have to make their own decision. But that was really the passion behind it.
Yeah. Well, that's awesome. And, life is still messy. As you mentioned, it's not going to guarantee anything and life still happens, but what a wonderful opportunity. Well, I'm guessing that you've had a lot of challenges along the way. I mean, you've got graduates at this point and married kids. So I know you've had a lot of challenges because you're human. So is there anything in particular you'd like to share with us, or maybe just some nugget of wisdom in general? I don't want you to have to tell anything embarrassing, but maybe you have some nugget of encouragement. I've read the book, so I know you tell some fun stories, but I thought maybe you have something in general you'd like to share with us. So
yeah, really, truly, I feel like every season brings a new challenge. Obviously, the hardest is when you have a new baby coming in and having toddlers. Whenever I'm speaking and I'm teaching people about how to homeschool with, little kids in the house, it's always that I think it's from about 15 months to 2.5 years of age that when you have a child that age and you're trying to actually pull off homeschool stuff, it's a little difficult. So that's probably the most challenging. but it just pushes you to learn, new ways of doing things and kind of tweaking things up and trying new things. But honestly, every season has its own set of challenges. I've had to back off of a lot of online things because I didn't even realize that, like, I got so much done during like nap time and quiet time in our house. And once I had, kind of older teenagers, I just realized how much time they needed with us. And we just launched 2 of our boys, and I really wanted that time with them. And so the challenge was, how to juggle all the things we have. And quite frankly, my answer was to stop. So I just kind of slowed down in my world of online. So it's fun to be back and kind of doing things like this. But each season you have to pray over it. There's going to be new challenges all the time that bubble up and pop up, and it's fine. You just kind of roll with it.
And I love that you're bringing up the new priorities. I know we're going to talk a little bit more about priorities later on, but that is so true. And well, I know that you and I first met on the homeschooling circuit because we both speak at homeschool conferences, and I had picked up your book. One of the things that I think you and I probably have learned through speaking with so many different homeschooling families is that homeschooling moms don't quit homeschooling because they can't find the right math book or the right language arts curriculum. They quit homeschooling because they're trying to do math and language and social studies and science and all these things they think are expected of them while they're trying to deal with laundry that's piled up to, I don't know where my arm is here, laundry that's piled up to here. And dad is eating, Frosted Flakes for the third night in a row, from a bowl he maybe had to wash himself from the kitchen sink or whatever. So they're trying to stay on top of life and meet those expectations, whether self-imposed or whatever they may be, for what they think home education is supposed to look like. So I loved when I picked up your book, M.O.M, Master Organizer of Mayhem, and I found we're really kindred spirits. So I wanted to know what inspired you, what motivated you to start writing down all of these things about organization?
Well, that's where I share the real stories, is that really it came from
the good ones are in here. The good ones are in here.
The good stories are in here, and I'll have to save it, but because it's so fun to tell. But I have some good ones. But we'll just say that I really did hit bottom in a lot of ways. Everything that could have gone wrong was going wrong in our home, and this is before we started homeschooling. And so we had to move to a new area. My husband's job was so demanding. He was covering 2 territories. We had, marriage conflicts, kid conflicts. We had sickness. We had 2 unexpected surgeries. We had seriously everything that could have been going wrong was going wrong in all the different areas. And I just kind of reached a point where I realized I can't control all this. Like, you have this false impression that you can control things, and it's just that, it's false. But I was trying to look at that season, what could I do? Like, what could I have a little bit of influence over? And that was really trying to figure out systems. I break every single rule when it comes to organizing. That's why I'm all about efficiency.
Yes.
Organization.
It's got to function. It's got to function. Yeah.
Right. That's right. And so when, it was like years had gone by, and I think it was when I still just had my 2 oldest, and they were still little, and I was asked to speak at a MOPS group. And my girlfriend, she's like, "Can you do it on home organization?" I'm like, "Are you sure you're talking to them? You want me to do that?" I'm like, "Are you kidding me?" I'm like, "You've been to my house. You've seen it messy." And she's like, "Yeah, it's messy, but like, we'll have a play date, at one time, like in the morning. And then in the evening when we're having like dinner with friends," she's like, "the house is clean." She's like, "How do you do that?" I'm like, "Well, I just have these little systems that I haven't, that I do." And she's like, "That's what I want you to talk about." So it forced me to really, self-analyze and figure out like, what is it that is, that I'm doing? And so I started like writing down all these things, and I was giggling because I started doing research about like, home organization. And I'm like, oh my gosh, I am doing everything wrong. Like, everything they tell you not to do. I'm like, oh my, well, wow, like it works. So I'm a firm believer in just doing what works for your family, and you have to constantly update it and change it, and not be afraid. Like, if something's not working, scrap it. Don't keep trying to make someone else's system work for you. So that's a big part of what the book is, behind the book. And honestly, what made me go beyond just writing down and doing that one talk was that I had moms coming up to me afterwards in tears, because they were just like, "Thank you for being honest." And I didn't realize until that moment just how deeply we carry around these expectations. I mean, we do it big time and as a homeschool mom, but we do it as just moms in general. We have these expectations that we feel like the world has brought upon us and that we put on ourselves. And there's nothing that is going to drive you to your knees faster than that. So I'm a firm believer also in just letting go of your expectations. And just my joke is that you have to warn your husband or, and maybe your kids, like if you have teenagers, like we're going to lower expectations in a few areas so that we can get more done. And, as long as they're game for it, then that works.
Yeah. And that's so true. At different seasons of life, your expectations are going to have to change. And, family and homemaking is really just a work in progress. So I know that in the book, you set out 10, I guess, kind of rules for starting your organizational journey. And you talk about toolbox tips. I love that each chapter has toolbox tips and some other little things that you can draw from. So we're looking at the beginning of the year here. We're in a new year. So what would you say if somebody's setting goals for their household? What's a good toolbox tip for them for starting out on this mayhem mastery journey? What's a good starting point?
Yeah. So I like to encourage people to January is a great season to kind of start anew and start fresh. So I would encourage people just to take a look at what you're doing, like what's working, what's not working. So kind of reevaluate your routines, reevaluate what's going on, and quite frankly, slow down, because I guarantee you there's probably at least 1 to 5 things you can drop from your schedule, drop from what you're trying to do. And so really evaluate that and just pray over it. I think we are too fast to just like make decisions and try to make things work and kind of try to create these perfect, beautiful schedules that we can put up on our wall. So many people even I have a homeschool organization course and I have like routines that I encourage people to create. And it's like, and it is a cute printable, but at the same time, it's like, it's for you to get the work done, not for you to be like, this is a pretty routine that I live by, because every day changes. So yeah, just in the new year, I always encourage people to give yourself grace, slow down, and reevaluate your routines. And I think that's a really great way to start the new year, because what people tend to do is bring on too many new things. So that's not helpful.
That's true. So I know I talk about juggling life and lesson plans. We talk about juggling, and we talk about the fact that a juggler learns to juggle by starting with one ball. And then he adds something to that and adds something to that. And we just want to start off juggling all 5 flaming things at the same time because we've seen somebody else we think does it well. So I love that. Just pare down and do what you can succeed at. So I know another one of your rules has to do with asking for help. And I think as moms, a lot of times we're reluctant to do that. Either we don't know how to ask, we don't know what it is that we need, we don't realize what the issue is, or maybe we're just afraid to ask. And maybe sometimes it feels like everybody knows what they're doing but us. And so we're scared to be vulnerable. So I appreciate that you're very vulnerable in your book and in your workshop. So I appreciate that. But can you tell us a little bit about why you believe community is so important and how, as moms, we can practical ideas for creating time, being purposeful about creating those relationships and building that community? So what have you found to work well?
Well, yeah. So asking for help is huge. And I think that there's this, again, it goes back to expectations that we just talked about. But we kind of have this feeling if you ask for help, you're admitting failure, you're admitting you're not perfect. And quite frankly, nobody probably thinks you're perfect and nobody expects you to be perfect. And so it's okay. And I think that it's so important to ask for help and to accept help when it's offered. That's something we forget about a lot of times too. Because I've had somebody be like, hey, do you want me to come over and help you with this? Like, no. And I'm like, yes. In fact, when we were hosting, we hosted my son's wedding in our backyard. So I remember just at one point, people were just like, hey, can I help? I'm like, yes. I don't know where we can use you yet, but I know we can use you. So yes. But trying to find that, it helps with co-ops. It helps with, Bible study groups, but really it just comes down to just say it, throw it out there. For me, a story that I share oftentimes was when we had our 4th and I was at a homeschool co-op where this little mom's prayer time. And so I thought, okay, the best way to ask for help is to put it in the form of a prayer request. So
of course.
I was like, I'm fine. But of course, as I'm trying to get the words out, I started bawling. I'm like, I'm just overwhelmed. My husband is traveling and the baby, and like, I'm like, blah. And so what was crazy though, is that the fact that I said it out loud meant that, like it's out there. And my girlfriend was sitting there who I'd known for like a few years. And she's like, you know what? My daughter is looking to earn money for ballet camp. And so that'd be great. She'd love to. Where do you live? Well, guess how close she was? She was 3 minutes away. I had no idea she was that close. And if I had not admitted my vulnerability and admitted that I needed help, I never would have found this gem, that was right down the street practically from us. And she's like literally like next neighborhood over. And Katie came over, and there were days where I had her helping with school stuff. There were days when I had her helping with folding laundry. There were days when I just had her with the kids so I could get out the door and just like go drink a coffee. In fact, I giggle because I was talking with some other more mature moms like myself that I remember when I was single and I would see women like having coffee by themselves or eating by themselves, and I would feel sorry for them. I'd be like, oh, that poor mom, like, or that poor woman, like by herself. That's so sad. Now I'm like, oh, I get it. I'm like, that woman's like, she needed some time, some time to herself. So, but that's why we need each other. When we ask for help, we give ourselves that time and that margin. And sometimes it's not just asking girlfriends. You can ask your family, talk to your husband. If you're married, you need to communicate on that level and just see how you guys can, better juggle together, but what it looks like to really slow down. Because that it starts with asking. You have to get the words out and pray over it. That's always my answer to everything. Pray over it. Pray for God to bring the right person. Pray for the right words. Pray how you can articulate your actual need, and He'll help you. So that's the beauty of prayer.
Yeah, and I love that you mentioned sharing your need with somebody. I find that we're talking a little bit about community here and relationships, and I find that some of the closest relationships that I've forged have begun in one of us sharing a need that the other one could help meet. So I think we're just designed to want to help each other and nurture one another. So I feel like sometimes we're depriving other people of the opportunity of serving when we don't share our needs. So
absolutely.
That's great as well.
No, I talk about that with some friends sometimes, is that like, I love it when I get to help someone. It blesses me when I get to help someone. And so like we were joking, we're like, like, let me bless you. Let me help you. And I'm like, see, so we're just blessing other people when we ask them for help.
That's right. That's
so, like,
right.
You
That's right.
reframe it in your head, and that's what you can do.
Yeah. And we're all at different seasons of life where sometimes we're in a place where we are able to give a little more, and sometimes we're just needing a little bit more help. So it comes down to sometimes our priorities. In your book, you talk about priorities. Specifically, I wanted to talk a little bit about when we set priorities that may look different than other families. And we're tempted to compare what we're setting as important right now, and maybe it's supposed to be something else because this other family is doing X, Y, Z. So can you delve a little more deeply into how you dealt with setting realistic priorities for your family?
Yeah, well, unfortunately, New Year's, new schedules, no matter what you do, we all still have 24 hours and 7 days. So really, when you look at priorities for us, I talk about my 4 F's in the book. So that is faith, family, friends, and fellow man. And so that's kind of the framework that we use. So when I am looking at the faith part, that's my relationship with God. That's got to come first. I've got to really make sure that I am taking time out of my day to sit and read the word and pray and, meditate on, whatever verses I'm going through. And that's so important. Even worship, I've started incorporating worship into that time, and it's so valuable. But the second is family. Like family has got to come first. And I always put spouse first. If you're married, your spouse is your number one priority, and then kids. What we tend to do with homeschool is we flip the whole thing. We're like, homeschooling is our first priority, and then the kids, and then our spouse, and then maybe ourselves somewhere in there. And we've got to
You're a family first. You're a family first. Yeah.
Family first. And so that's so important. And oftentimes I think what we get mixed up in is serving. And so a lot of times we'll put like, oh, doing things at church, youth group, Awana, women's Bible study, men's Bible study, like all of the different things, serving in whatever ministries that you want to serve in. Sometimes we'll put that up with faith. And quite frankly, I move it over to the friends category because I look at the friends category as being like the body of Christ. And so that's where that's going to go, because my family has got to come first. And so it's hard. But when I start looking at the things that are going onto my calendar and I'm using that judgment, it helps so much because I know that I can't do it all. And a big piece of advice that I give people is, and it works with house, like with organizing and house cleaning, but it also works with your schedule. And so like when people always ask, like, where do I start in my house? I'm like, pick a spot and then completely gut it, like clear everything out. So if you're doing a bookshelf, take every single book off the shelf because that helps you. So when you're looking at prioritizing, take everything off your plate, blank slate. Okay, now what deserves a place on that plate? What deserves a place on that shelf? And that really, really helps you to think through like what is most important. And then of course, pray over everything. But really, truly, take a look at those different things. Because there have been seasons, like right now, my kids are in Awana. My three younger kids, well, my two youngest are in Awana. My son goes to a Bible study class that's at the same time. But I've had seasons where, especially when my husband was traveling a lot, like we could not do Awana because if he was home, I wanted us all home. And so we, there's great things out there, but not everything deserves a place at the table. Not everything deserves a spot on your calendar for the season. There are seasons that they can come back on. Like right now, again, with Awana, like we have seasons for, this is our season to do Awana. And as I mentioned earlier, there are seasons like I had to walk away from my online little business ministry and speaking, which I love, but my family was more important. We were getting ready to launch our two oldest boys. And I just knew like I needed every bit of focus and attention to go into pouring into my family in that last little time. Because our goal is to launch our kids, but I don't think I was ever really prepared for that. Like,
are we ever ready for that?
No. I had a girlfriend. She's got kids in high school, and she's like, really, truly. She's like, what's it like launching your kids? I'm like, it's horrible. Like it's, especially as a homeschool mom, because I'm like, everyone together. And I'm like, and now that I'm like, okay, go fly free. It's so heart-wrenching, but it's so good because they're thriving and like, it's the goal. My husband keeps bringing me back to that. He's like, it's the goal. We did it. And I'm like, okay.
Yeah, part of the goal here is our goal is to work ourselves out of a job, but it's hard when we do get to that point. So good for you.
I know.
Well, I appreciate that analogy. Yes. Yeah. Well, one of my, we have a lot of kids and grandkids as well, and great grandkids. We have 23 grandkids and 7 I guess we're up to 10 great grandkids now. And we have another wedding coming up soon with one of my grandchildren. And I can't figure out where the years have gone, but I keep reminding myself this was our goal. We're raising future generations. So, but I appreciate the analogy that you gave when you were talking about when we physically tidy things up and we physically reorganize, we maybe go into a cupboard, we take everything out, get rid of stuff that didn't really need to be in there. It's somehow taking up some space, got set up on the shelf, clean everything out, and then figure out what is the purpose of this particular space and what needs to go back into it. So to do that time-wise, that's such a great analogy, but I want to go back to the mom who's listening who would be overwhelmed by taking the whole closet apart. So she's just going to concentrate on one shelf. So would you say if she's looking at her schedule that instead of thinking of overhauling her whole schedule to maybe pick a day, pick an activity, where would you think if she could pick one baby step, totally overwhelmed, step number 1?
When you're looking for something, I like to encourage people to pick one thing. Number one thing, just one little thing, because that is where like one of the rules is baby steps. And so, you can pick one big thing and then break it down into smaller bite-sized pieces. So you can say like, I'm going to do the closet. Well, let's do this wall first. Let's do this section first.
Just the shoes. Just the
shoes. That's right. For me, that's not hard. I'm so not a shoe person. I should be. I want to be, but I'm not. But I'm like, it helps when I'm in San Diego because I can just wear flip-flops. But when it comes to that, I do encourage people either pick something easy, like a drawer that's driving you crazy. But think about that. What's driving you crazy? What's an area that every time you walk by it, you go, that's where you're going to really get the most bang for your buck, because that's the area that's probably, once you find a solution for that, like for us, it was shoes. We had shoes and we had socks and we had sweatshirts that were all over the house. So I was like, okay, how do I fix this? It went, so for, in that case, it wasn't like a specific area. It was like, because the area was everywhere, but I tried to look at what's the problem. And I realized we don't really have a home for the shoes for the little kids. So I got some baskets and I trained them how to do that. And the sweatshirts, what I realized in that season was that my little kids were too short to hang the hangers up. So as much as it seemed helpful to say, now here's how you put your sweatshirt on a hanger, like it doesn't help if they can't reach
Not going to happen.
the hook. And I'm like, well, ask your big brothers. Like, but my big brothers aren't always there. So the problem was solved by just getting some little stick-on hooks that they could hook. So everybody had a hook for their sweatshirt. And then, at some point, if we had too many sweatshirts, then because sometimes we'll have two, usually my kids don't have more than three, but, two sweatshirts, then maybe we need to go, I need to help them put it away in their closet. But just creating systems that work for your kids and helping them to understand them is key. But again, like find that one project. I personally, I start in my garage oftentimes, and that's a weekend. But when it comes to picking a project, you need to look at your calendar and you need to schedule the time to organize. And so you might need to set up having kids go on a play date with some friends. You might need to have your husband take them out of the house because sometimes little hands undo all that you're trying to do. But you can pick anything again, but the most important thing, like the biggest key, is to clear that section completely, because we have this crazy habit in our schedules, like we talked about, and also in our home projects of like just tidying. Like tidying doesn't really get to the heart of the issue because we're not seeing and really truly pulling it down, cleaning the surface area. And then we're going to put things back that really belong and that really should stay and that are truly a blessing to us and to our home.
Instead of reorganizing our clutter every which way.
Reorganizing our clutter. I know. And I do it too. And I feel like I always need to give like the disclaimer, like I wrote these rules because they're the rules that I need to try to get myself to stick to. And when they're not in my life, then my life is messy. So I struggle, and that's why I wrote it. So I struggle with it. And so I'm not perfect at it. So I laugh because I once had a girlfriend, when I got the book deal, she would come over and she's like, "You're writing a book on home organization?" I'm like, "I am." You don't see it now, but I am.
Well, and sometimes it's because, I'm writing to myself. And so I may as well share that conversation with somebody else. So yeah, that works. I had to laugh about the hooks because I have to ask myself a lot of times, okay, what's the problem here? What's the root of it? What's going on? And why is that happening? And why is that happening? And why is that happening? Till you get to the root. For example, like you said, the kids just can't reach anything. I recently got for the coats in our front hall, I got it's a wooden board that has these hooks that go up and down. So when you're not using them, they're not poking. I'm always afraid I'm going to poke myself on something. So they go away. So I just love finding fun little things like that. So
that's awesome.
Yes.
Oh, I like that.
I'll send you a picture. Figuring out the root of what's going on. So we've gone into this new year now, and we're, setting, a lot of our families are setting some goals. Some of us have just given up on that, but some of us are setting some goals for the new year. How do we gauge that they're attainable? How do we keep the goals realistic? Do you have any suggestions for that?
Well, that's a good question.
Be realistic here.
Yeah, being realistic. I mean, I have the goal every year of like, I'm going to like declutter my entire house, and
it hadn't happened
but it
yet,
never
right?
happens. No. And so that's the thing is like, goals are fine, right? Whatever goals you want, but and yes, they need to be specific, but that is really where the baby steps come in. And so if my goal is to declutter the whole house, then amen. That's a great goal, but I can't do that in a day. Like that's not going to happen. So I really try to encourage people, break it down. So what does that look like? Well, that looks like we're going to start in the kitchen, or like we're going to start wherever. Pick a spot to start, and then break that room down. And so you're kind of breaking down your goals until it is attainable and it is simple. It's part of the big goal, but that's okay. Like you're just getting a piece of that goal done, because now you're one step closer to the ultimate goal of whatever it is you pick. So I think it's great to set goals, like, again, like, but don't set too many. Like, I want to lose 50 pounds, and I'm going to exercise and eat right. And then I'm going to, clean my whole house, and I'm going to have a new routine. I'm going to do all these things, and they sound so great, but they're not all attainable at the same time. So you have to pick one thing at a time. And quite frankly, if your goal is to lose weight, then start in your pantry for being your room to just declutter, get rid of all the junk that's in there. And truly, look at the labels. That will talk you into getting rid of some of the stuff that doesn't belong in your pantry if you're trying to eat healthy. like, oh, these Oreos, not that Oreos stay in the house, but like, like the different things, like look and see what the expiration dates are, and so really like just pick, you can, again, like I'm fine, set your goals, but you're only going to achieve those goals when you break them down into baby steps that are attainable. So that's what you have to do, is leave that space for yourself.
Well, I think that's great. And I think you've given us some wonderful food for thought here. Speaking of the pantry, some great food for thought. And we're going to have a few minutes for questions, because Kristi's really good at off the cuff. And I'm going to have to look through here and see, what's your system for giving things away? So when you're decluttering, I know in my house, I tend to I'll go through and I'll say, I don't need to keep this. And I'll have this box, and I just keep accumulating things to give away. And the next thing I know, they're just redistributed through the house somewhere, or somebody's put something else in the box and now it's all mixed up. So do you have a plan for when you do kind of declutter or purge? Is it a one-day thing? Do you have a specific plan for how you get rid of what's left? How does that work for you?
So the key for our family, and again, so that's an important distinction. So my family is different than your family. We're all different. So you have to find what works for you, and you might have to tweak those systems to get it to work for you. So what works for my family is I have a big old bin that I sit, like, again, this has come in stages, but I have a big old bin, and we used to just throw things in there. Now I like have a big black trash bag. I fold over it. And so clothes that don't fit, all of that kind of stuff go into this bin. And right now, actually, I laugh because I'm like, oh, and it's overflowed right now. So I'm like, we really need to take it to Goodwill. Or actually, we take our stuff to Salvation Army. But I don't have it in my house. That, I think, is huge. It's in the garage. So if you have space to put it somewhere else, or deep into a closet, well, I wouldn't even do deep in a closet because I get scared.
The trunk. How about the trunk of the car?
Trunk is wonderful. In fact, if you're going to keep things like that in the trunk, like I would keep like a roll of black trash bags, or some kind of like a few trash bags. So then it's not like I've got all this stuff just sitting there, like just shove it in so then it just makes it easier to be like, here you go, when you drive by and drop things off. But we definitely try to bless, like if we have, like right now, I went through my son's closet because we had laundry was overflowing. So I'm like, let's go back and let's take a look at what's going on here. And it usually is that, now that he's bringing in, like we had pulled out a bin of my older boy's stuff. And so now we have a lot of stuff that, he doesn't fit in anymore. So we're pulling that out. And the items of clothing that actually are still really, nice and look good, those are the ones that I'm, putting to the side for some friends, but I literally put those in my car in a bag, and I give myself a time frame. Like if I don't give it to them this Sunday, then you know what? They're going to Goodwill. So as much as it, like, I know it would be a blessing to them if I could get them some of the nicer pieces of clothing, like it's not blessing us if it just sits in my car or sits in the house. So,
or they really outgrow it before you get it to them. Yeah.
Right. Exactly. So just creating a system that works for you. So for us, we have a set spot. We gave it to, we donate it. I just found it recently, this amazing consignment store near our house that I just didn't understand how that worked. And that's been my new kind of crazy passion, is I take things to the consignment store and then they actually try to sell it for me. And if they don't sell it, they get rid of it. So I love it.
So it's kind of
That's
an
been my new passion.
intermediary step for you. You can feel like you're doing a good thing with it, and then if it doesn't happen, then it's gone and you didn't have to touch it. So that's always good.
Right,
Well,
exactly.
another area that a lot of our families struggle with, and I think especially as homeschoolers, is paper management. Do you have any special paper management tools or resources that you've loved, especially as homeschoolers, where we see something? Maybe I think one of our moms, Kristi's, mentioned here that you find some stuff, you're not going to use it right now, but you want to have it for later on, so you print it off. What do you do with all this stuff?
I know. So that's a big question because you have to have a home for everything, including paper. So if you have things coming into your home that are paper or that you're printing, especially with homeschooling. So when I talk about this, I have a few different courses. One is a homeschool organization course. So if it's homeschool related, I would definitely direct people to homeschoolorganization.com. But if it's paper related in the house, I have a whole section. I have a whole section of a course that talks about that because like there's so many fun tools. I'm like looking around right now. I don't have the specific ones that I was going to talk about, but here's a pretty one. I'll show you this guy. So like this is just my office one. And so it's just a little holder for my different papers. So they all have little tabs so they know where to go. But whenever you're trying to organize, anything, you have to categorize to organize. So when it's paper, like if I find that we have a stack of paper, number one, that tells me I have a broken system somewhere because things shouldn't be stacking up, which I have to admit, this is my biggest area. Paper piles are like my nemesis. They are not easy for me. But what I do when I'm going through them is then I just kind of sort them out. Like, is this a bill? It shouldn't be a bill because we try to do most of ours online. Is this school related, art related, whatever it is. And so that helps me to categorize things. And then I make sure that if it's something that needs to have action done on it, then I take action. And so that's actually usually one of the piles, like I need to do these things now. And so do those things that need to get done that one time. You get it done once. Like I try not to touch the paper multiple times. So, that's when I'm moving it here, moving it here, it's just never going to get done. And so then I have a filing system. So downstairs, I have a bigger filing system. In fact, I have like that little cute gold thing. I have black things that fit inside of my drawers that I keep my papers in. And so if it's because I love printing recipes, I love trying new recipes. And that's often, if you see a pile, it's usually because I printed like 10 recipes and I haven't done it yet. So I have a file for recipes to try. And so those recipes do not belong in my recipe area because those are my tried and true, the ones that I can go to when I need something. But I have a recipe try folder. And so if that starts getting too squished, then it's time to go through it. And that's the big thing too, is that's what containers do. So a file, that's containment. So when that container or that file, right, when that starts getting overflowing, that means it's time to purge that and it's time to go through it and be harsh.
You mean it's not time to just get a bigger box?
No, slap a label on it, put it in the closet. No, I know. Even though that doesn't make it pretty. Like that's the problem is like these days you can make clutter look really pretty.
Yeah.
But yes, so you have to find systems that work. There's so many different things. And I share that I have I apparently like acronyms because this is M.O.M, Master Organizer of Mayhem. I have one that's H-O-M-E, so home, and it's Home Organization Made Easy. And so that's a course on my website. And so I have a whole section just on paper management and I show my favorite products that I use in my home for that.
Okay. Awesome. Well, and that's so true. It's so good because you mentioned earlier having homes for things. One of the things I tried to stress, I'm sure my kids heard it more times than they cared to hear it, was don't put it down, put it away.
Ooh, I like
because
that.
We did the math and we figured up if you spend just 10 minutes a day, 5 minutes in the morning, somebody can't find his shoes. 5 minutes at night, somebody can't find it. You have no idea how they lost their toothbrush, but they can't find their toothbrush. So you got 5 minutes at night, 5 minutes in the morning. Over the course of a year, you've spent over 60 hours looking for things. And I got better things to do with those 60 hours than looking for stuff. So the other thing that was helpful for me, and I think you allude to this type of thing and some systems for this in your book, is I used to ask myself when I cleaned up, where can I put this? Where I've got to get this gone. Where can I put it? And I learned to instead ask myself, where will I think to look for this
Yes.
when I need it again?
Such a great tip. Yes.
Revolutionized my life. And I know that you hit on those types of things in your book. And so I really, really appreciated that. Well, let me take a couple look here. Some this other guy. The other Kristi says, you don't just buy another file cabinet. Bummer. Yes, I said, yeah, I understand. We went from 2 drawers to 4 drawers to okay.
Oh yeah.
And Kristi,
well, while you're looking, I'll share like side note, personal note. You guys can all know about my personal life. I'm cleaning out my dad's house right now because we're getting ready to put him into an assisted living program, and when I was going, he has this monster file cabinet, and I was like, oh my word. And so I got to paper organize him and going through all of these things. And it's amazing when you really look at stuff. We save stuff that like, I don't need like files that I kept from 1980s. Like I'm trying to find all those, but like every once in a while I'll find things that are from like way back in the day. Yes, I was alive. Yeah. And yes, I filed things even back then. So it's crazy.
Yeah. Well, you've given us some wonderful ideas. I know you go into a lot more practical tips in the book, as well as on your website, your podcast. So I encourage people, we've got the links dropped here, several different places for you. Her store and her classes are listed here for you in the comments. Kristi has given us some super home organization tips. So parents, if you're also wondering how to organize your actual homeschool program on top of this, HSLDA does have a lot of great resources for you, including a series that we have on lesson planning, and we're going to have that link for you in the comments as well. And if you aren't already a member of HSLDA, I do encourage you to join us. We'll be bringing you a lot more wonderful content, like speaking with folks like Kristi who encourage and equip us and help us on our homeschool journey. So thank you again so much, Kristi, for joining us. And we hope all of y'all out there have a wonderful day.
Oh, thank you for having me. And I do have to do a little plug because I have to say that we are lifetime members of HSLDA. And even beyond that, we support the ministry as much as we can, whenever we can. I have to tell you guys, like HSLDA is like, I would never homeschool without you guys. And we will be supporting you guys even beyond our homeschool years, because you guys have been just such an amazing resource for us. And I laugh because like about the time that I kind of started dropping off, the online world was about the time that we had, we started going into the high school years, and everyone was asking me for content on how do you homeschool, through high school. And even as I, counsel people now and will help people through it, I'm like, truly just HSLDA, like just call HSLDA. I'm like, there's ways to do it, but call HSLDA. They're amazing. So you guys have been awesome and just so helpful. So thank you.
Well, thank you for those kind words, and thanks again, and wonderful to see you again. Maybe I'll see you on the circuit this year, but y'all have a wonderful day.
Bye.
Today's program is made possible by M.O.M Possible. Step into this engaging, interactive space for practical support from moms who are right there with you in the day-to-day of homeschooling. You can browse our library of tips and resources, see how other parents are answering common questions about homeschooling, or join our mentoring group for deeper community support. Get started at mompossible.org. That's mompossible.org. Thanks for listening to this episode of Homeschool Talks. If you've enjoyed this conversation, will you do us a favor by sharing it with a friend or leaving us a review on Apple Podcasts? As a reminder, you can find show notes for this episode along with our other Homeschool Talks conversations at hslda.org/podcast. And if you want to be the first to know about new episodes, as well as upcoming guests and topics, you can sign up for our email list using the link in the show notes. That's all for now. We hope you enjoyed this program, and we'll see you next time.